Welcome. I'm Raul Lowry Contreras. This is the Contreras Report Mexico edition. A couple of days ago, the President of the United States, Joseph Biden, and the President of Mexico, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, AMLO, met by computer. They had a virtual summit. Now, normally they would be face-to-face in either on the Texas border or in San Diego and Tijuana or El Paso or Ciudad Juarez. But this time, because of the pandemic, they decided to have a virtual summit. Now, this is traditional. The President of the United States and the President of Mexico always get together when they're both, especially when they're both brand new. And in this case, Biden is new, and Obrador has been in office not quite 2 years. Okay, so what we would prefer is an eyeball-to-eyeball meeting across the table with all your assistants there discussing important issues that affect both countries. And when the 2,000-mile border with 330 million people on the American side and 130, the largest Spanish-speaking nation in the world, there, next door, many issues. We're talking about water, commerce, politics. We're talking about drugs, and we're talking about medical, and we're talking about legal workers going from Mexico to the U.S. and from the U.S. to Mexico. Here, for example, in Baja California, there's 250,000 Americans living here in Baja California. That's a lot of people. And in Los Angeles, God only knows how many Mexican nationals live there, but probably 1 million or more. I don't know. So there's always things to discuss, and they really should be discussed across the table or over cocktails, sitting down in nice, comfortable chairs, talking man to man. Someday it'll be man to woman or woman to woman, but right now it's man to man, as it always has been. So the talks had to touch on various issues. Like I say, there's a water problem. Farmers in Chihuahua are objecting to Mexico sending water to Texas. That's water Mexico owes from the Rio Grande. Well, the farmers in Chihuahua are upset because they don't have as much water as they need to grow crops. Now, on the other hand, in California, which is the #1 agricultural state in the country and in fact the world, we have 500,000 Mexican citizens working in our fields. Now you see, that kind of number is important because that's the kind of number of workers needed for California, Arizona, and Texas agriculture. More than that, actually, it's probably 800,000 nationally. People here working illegally. But that's because the crops that they work are labor intensive. A head of lettuce does not pick itself. A head or a basket of strawberries do not pick themselves. And a machine can't pick them because a machine can't tell by looking at a strawberry that it's ready to be picked, so that somebody 3 or 4 days down the road can eat them as strawberry shortcake, on their strawberry shortcake. An eyeball has to see the strawberry. An eyeball doesn't have to see corn. You know when corn is ready, there it is. You got a machine that comes in and it picks the entire acre or hundreds of acres. The same thing with wheat. You can do a wheat farm, let's say a wheat farm of 100 acres. I don't know if there's any that small, but you would only need 2 or 3 people to work that farm from the day they start preparing to plant to the day they harvest the wheat and send it off to the mill. Really, 2 or 3 people, that's it, because it's all mechanized. You've seen those big machines that, like lawnmowers that cut wheat 20 feet across. So if your field is 100 feet wide, 5 trips, and it's done. It's picked, and then the machine sorts it out, and they get it ready to send to have somebody else mill it. Okay, corn, the same thing. Tomatoes, they've switched from hand picking, although they're the best, to machine picked. The tomatoes were developed by the University of California, Davis, when machines started to be developed to pick tomatoes, and the number of workers here illegally just grew so monstrous that the government had to step in and start deporting as many as they possibly could. But the tomatoes that were developed by the University of California, they taste like cardboard. And now you see the better stores always carrying tomatoes that are vine ripened, right? Or vine grown. Not the kind that are picked by machines. They do truly taste like cardboard. Okay. So all of the crops in California, most of them are labor intensive. The result is, for example, in a strawberry field, let's say you have a field of 50 acres in size. That may be too large, I don't know. But let's say that it is, because California produces the most strawberries of any place in the world. So let's say you have a 50-acre field. Okay, you need people to prepare it for planting. You need people to plant it. You need people to tend the strawberry plants. Then you need people to pick them. Then you need people to package them. Then you need people to drive them someplace, okay? We're talking about a lot of people. That's a lot more for a 50-acre strawberry farm than is required for 1,000 acres of wheat or 1,000 acres of corn. Trust me. I mean, if you've lived in California or you've traveled in California, you know when you pass fields like that, strawberry fields in San Diego County or Orange County or up the road in Monterey County, you look in the field and there'll be 30, 40 people in one field just tending and picking. And this labor-intensive force has shrunk. It's shrunk over the years. I wrote a column in 2000, published by the San Francisco Chronicle. You can Google it. You can Google in the San Francisco Chronicle in the year 2000, my article on the disappearing Mexican agricultural workforce. Here's what's happened. Back about 40 years ago, the Mexican government, which was sort of anti-Catholic at the time, decided to do a national birth control program. And they hired women all over the country. Over the years, every village has more than 50 people in it, probably has a representative of the federal government that passes out condoms and there's birth control pills and what have you. This was a national effort. So 25, 30 years ago, the average Mexican fertile woman had 7 children. 7 children. Mike Wallace did a 60 Minutes story about this. Since that time, this national birth control program has grown to such an extent that the birth rate in Mexico is no longer 7. It's not 5. It's not 4. It's not 3. It's just slightly over 2, at least in the Valley of Mexico, where they study it thoroughly. The Valley of Mexico is a huge place, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about 30, 40 million people altogether. Anyway, so there are fewer teenaged men turning 18 now, which was the traditional age that they would leave Mexico and come to California, Arizona, Texas to work in the fields. There are fewer of them. On top of that, Mexican industry is growing like crazy. The Mexican car industry is ranked number 5 in the world now, I think. I'm pretty sure it's number 5. And it exports 80% of its cars to the United States, yes, but it also exports to 100 different other countries. I have seen Mexican-made cars in Azerbaijan, in Turkey, and where else have I seen them? Of course, in Canada. And if you see Nissan Sentries, they're all made in Mexico. The Volkswagen Bug, all made in Mexico. The Mercedes-Benz buses, the 14-passenger buses, made in Mexico. And they use them as taxis in Mexico. They're so ubiquitous. But there's still a huge demand for farm workers in California, Arizona, and Nevada, and Texas. So if Congress were so stupid They would put together a work permit program like we had during World War II and for 20 years, the Bracero program, where they were legally allowed in with papers to work in farms in the United States. The program was created because World War II took so many young men out of the American farming community into the military. You can't grow wheat while you're fighting in Germany or on Guadalcanal. So they developed this program. It lasted for 20 years. It was canceled by the Kennedy administration because the labor unions objected to it. They said, the labor unions did, that if there were no Mexican workers allowed in, that in fact there would be plenty of American workers that would take those jobs, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is the dumbest thing that a labor leader has ever said other than join my union. Because Americans don't want those jobs. How many Americans do you know that want to go stand at a corner or at the gate of a big farm and at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to have a truck come up or a bus and have some foreman say, I need 12 guys today. You. That's how it works. How many Americans would do that? In Los Angeles, I have done articles. I have gone through central Los Angeles and interviewed people. And I did an article before the big riot of 1992, in which everything I predicted in 1991 came true. Anyway, you would see corners where Mexican workers, albeit here illegally, would stand on one corner and people would pull up and hire them to do yard work or whatever the case would be. So there may be 20 guys standing there at 7 o'clock in the morning, and by 9 o'clock there might only be 2 or 3 or 4, if any. Across the street or a block away in South Central Los Angeles, you might find 20 or 30 young black men also there to be hired as house painters, yard work, or whatever, okay? The Mexican, say, house painter, would charge $50 for the day. The American wants $100 or $75. And then he wonders why the Mexican gets hired and he doesn't. It's a demand situation, a supply and demand situation. If somebody has an opportunity to go to work for $50, he takes it, while the guy that's asking for $100 is not going to get hired. Okay. All right. So these are the kind of things that the President of Mexico, Lopez Obrador, and President Biden discuss, because there are things that need to be done. There's the drug problem. There's the cartel problem. There's straight commerce. Where I'm sitting right now is 1,000 yards from one of the busiest international borders crossings in the world with commercial trucks. Sometimes when I'm heading for the gate, I have to stop at a signal light or have a traffic cop stop traffic because 30, 40, 50, 18-wheeler trucks have just come in from the United States carrying whatever they're carrying, going to the factories here where they take that material and they turn it into something. And that was how the Maquiladoras program started, the milling program, where they would take raw items, raw material, and turn it into a finished product, and then send it back to the United States, with duty being charged just on the added value. In other words, the amount of labor, and labor is relatively cheap here. The minimum wage in this state of Baja California is just gone up, and it's about the equivalent of $12 for a day. But nobody works for that, trust me. No one works for that in Tijuana. And the factories, they steal each other's employees. Anyway, there's a huge commerce going between the two countries. $1.5 billion a day. $1.5 billion a day. 1 million Americans and Mexicans cross the border in each direction every day. The United States trade with Mexico is over $500 billion, and then there's trade with Canada. So the total thing is approaching $1 trillion in trade. That's $1 trillion roaming around North America, bouncing off the walls and landing in people's pockets like yours and mine. This is big business. The North American Free Trade Agreement, which is now called USMCA, same agreement, ladies and gentlemen. Don't let anybody tell you it's not the same. They added a few things, they subtracted a few things, but the essential 20,000 item NAFTA agreement of 1993 is alive and kicking today under a new name. NAFTA 2.0 USMCA, United States Mexican Canadian Trading Association, or whatever Mr. Trump called it. Huge, huge trade. So those are the things that the presidents of the two countries discussed, and those are the two things that are the several things that will need to be discussed in the future meetings between the President Lopez Obrador of Mexico and the President of the United States, Joseph Biden, or whoever it might be. These meetings must continue because our countries must work together. So while Lopez Obrador is trying to screw around in Mexico and take private investment out of the electrical generation industry, Mexico is now producing about 40%, 45% of its electrical generation is now done by private firms, mostly solar and wind. Lots of sunshine in Mexico. Now, the oil business in Mexico is falling apart because the national oil company, Pemex, is only refining at 38% capacity. So Mexico is having to import oil from the US of A. Off where I live, there are 5, 6 oil tankers every day pumping oil into the Pemex refinery in Rosarito Beach. Excuse me, but that's not enough because there's so much demand in Baja California for gasoline in cars, mostly made in America or made by our companies in Mexico to American standards, that the gas sold here in Baja, in northern Baja, is from the United States. I just bought gas today at a Mexican gas station. It's from Long Beach, from a refinery in Long Beach. That's all there is today for the Mexican thing. We'll keep an eye on it. About once a month, we'll give you a report. If you're interested in Mexico and traveling down there, they're opening up the tourism again, which has really suffered greatly because of the pandemic. And like I said, there's lots of sun in Mexico, lots of beach. The beach that I live on is 1,500 miles long. That's right. It starts at Tijuana and goes down to the tip of Baja, Cabo San Lucas, and then comes back up through the Gulf of California. It's 1,500 miles, longest peninsula in the world. I'm sure they'll welcome your visit whenever you come down here. I'm Raul Lowry Contreras. This is the Contreras Report, Mexico edition. Subscribe to it on YouTube or Facebook, and we will get together soon. I'll bring you more news from Mexico shortly. Thank you.